Right. Okay. Kate Floss. And going to have a video today. It's a bit of an old video. Just about, there's a lot of new members and people are asking. People get a bit confused. I did do the Bill of Rights, and I have done the 1689 Bill of Rights, and I have done the 1852 Constitution. Hi, there's Jeanette. Oh, I'm so happy that you're here. Somebody's watching. It's great. It's really important at the moment that that we all of us stand together, Anzacs, Australia and New Zealand. Now, what has happened is that in 1986, when our constitutions were removed from our countries, our Western countries, what has happened is there's been a lot of foreigners coming in and hanging around Indigenous people. What they've done is collected up all these Indigenous people, divided them up into the groups, and then they've told the Indigenous people to take back their country. What they've done is, in New Zealand, it's coming to Australia. It's really bad in New Zealand. What they've done is, in 1986, they gave all the Indigenous lands back, and then all of those lands were incorporated. They became corporations in 1986, and also in the Aboriginals in Australia as well. And what has happened is that a lot of those groups, they divided up and then they rejoined together the groups and joined all of their corporations together to make one big corporation. They bought out the smaller groups, and there's been, I'm hearing lots and lots of stories of how people have been ripped off. They've lost their lands. Most of the money's gone offshore, and a lot of these corporations, they're in hidden haven, tax havens, offshore, all in the Pacific Islands, and the New Zealand Maori, a lot of them don't even know what's going on. Some of them can get some money, but a lot of them are not. Now, what's going on now, we've got to put all that aside, New Zealand, Australia, we've got to put it aside, and we've all got to stand together, because now they're talking about a new constitution, and we've got people in our parliament. As you know, our parliament's being run by Mexicans, Iranians, Indonesians, Fijians, Somalians, you name it, they're in our parliament. The last thing we want is them writing a constitution for us. Now, we've got these things called the Maori nations. We've got the Maori nations. We've got another one called New Freeland. We've got another one. There's many of them. Lady Crown, she's doing something. Mike Stace and another lady, Heroa, they're doing something. They're saying they're all on different boats. And what they're all doing is trying to claim sovereignty for their little piece of land. Their little piece. But we've got to all stand together, because we're talking about the country here. And if there is a constitution to be written in the next, you don't want a constitution to be written during the time of COVID-19. And they're setting it up right now. And this is what happened in 1986. There was a bloodless, they call it the bloodless coup. Now, you know what a coup means. A coup means that they've taken over Parliament and nobody really asked them to do it. There was a bloodless coup in 1986 where both parties got together in the middle of the night, and they deleted the 1986, the 1852 Constitution. In that Constitution, it had two sections. Section 72 said you could not sell Maori lands, and Section 73 said that they could not sell Crown lands. And as soon as they got rid of that 1852 constitution, they went ahead and sold all of our lands. I'm telling you something, all New Zealanders, it's happening in Australia too. It's happened here, but it's coming to Australia, or they're doing it in Australia too. But a lot of the lands have been sold already. So you might as well forget about that. There's a little wee bit left, Aimahutu, a couple of small pieces, but the majority of it has all been incorporated. It's all offshore in companies that we know nothing about. Don't worry about that. We can fix all that later. But now they want to bring in this new constitution that they're talking about writing. And listen to me, before 1986, the Queen rules, and you see I've got a ruler on her, because she's the ruler. Now, a lot of people are saying to me, Kate, what the Queen rules? She's not the real Queen, she's the fake Queen. And all of this, it's all just rubbish that you're talking about. The Queen was placed in power to take care of the constitutions and our bills of rights. That's what she doesn't own the sovereignty of anyone. She never owned the sovereignty of New Zealand. It always belonged with the people that you are sovereign to the land that you're born to. So it doesn't matter what colour you are. If you were born in New Zealand to New Zealand born parents, then you are the sovereign keeper of that land for the descendants. It doesn't really, nobody owns land, truth be known. But anyway, what we've got to do is we've got to go back, and today I have got here for you the 1688 Bill of Rights, and I'm going to explain to you how the Queen came to be in power and why it was thought that we needed to have a constitutional monarchy. We have a constitutional monarchy, and these coup makers are trying to get rid of it. And they're using all sorts of lies and deception. But I'm telling you, Maripians, you're not to listen. It's lies and deception. And the minute that 1852 constitution is completely cut, they haven't cut it yet, because we have an unwritten constitution. But the minute they cut it, that's when the real trouble is going to start, I'm telling you. And we don't want these foreigners writing our constitution. So if you want to change the constitution, there's nothing wrong with that, but now is not the time to do it. And if it is done, it needs to be done by all 3 million of us New Zealanders. All have to decide together. And what's wrong with these Maori Nations people and these Mike Stace people that are going off, they're saying in their waka, they're all on different wakas, but what they're doing is they're fighting to get the sovereignty of the country into their group of hands. And it's all done behind closed doors. But that's not what we want, New Zealand. If you want to have a new constitution, you want it done openly, transparently, and you want the 3 million born New Zealanders to do it. So when they made this bloodless coup, they also later on had in 2017, they had a constitutional conference about whether to be a republic, but it's coming up again now. And what they ordered was that the courts needed to be obedient to Parliament. They said the courts are under Parliament, not Parliament under the court. And it used to be that Parliament had to go through the Governor-General, then through the courts of the Parliament of England, and then through the Queen to get any passed laws. Well, they've wiped all that out. And then by rights, they should have to be answerable to the court. But they've made the courts answerable to them. So these people in our Parliament are answerable to no one. They have all power. And now it's not just all the foreigners and Jacinda Ardern. There's the Maoris in there as well. So there's these Maori groups. And so we're going to go on to that. Now people are talking about the 1689 Bill of Rights, that's what I'm talking about. And then you've got these these groups of Maoris, a lot of groups of New Zealand Maoris, and some of them are not even Maori, like Mike Stace, who's an American, who's signing on to Maori documents. Why have you got an American signing on to your Maori documents? That is a mistake in itself. And they're talking about going back to the 1835 Declaration. Then we've got the 1840 Treaty, and then we've got the 1852 Bill of Rights, and then we've got the 1986 Constitution, which is it's an unwritten, and then we've got the 1990 replacement of this Bill of Rights that I'm telling you about today. What I want all of New Zealanders to understand, I'm going to make this really simple so everybody can understand. We've got to get started. So originally they had this thing called the Magna Carta, and I'm hearing a lot of people saying, oh, we have to go back to the Magna Carta and we want to use the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta was used, it was the barons and the lords, and at that time England and all those areas was ruled by Roman Catholics, to my understanding. It was ruled by Roman Catholics, and the normal people, which were called serfs, they were all just slaves, and they weren't allowed to own the land. The barons owned the land, and so the Catholics were always fighting with the barons, and then the barons would be fighting with the people. And the Magna Carta was an agreement. Mostly, it was not an agreement, from my understanding, made between the people. It was an agreement made between the barons and the kings. And a lot of people are saying to go back to the Magna Carta. Now, you have to be careful, because if you go back to the Magna Carta, you delete the 1689 Bill of Rights, which was by the people for the people. And you're going to understand when I read this Bill of Rights to you, the preamble, in a minute. Now, the Magna Carta, now what I was going to say, it had, the rights that it had were for the barons.
I finished another unit.
And the Catholics were ruling, and what was happening was the Catholics kept reneging. They did not honour the Magna Carta that they had agreed, and so it was re-signed and redone a couple of times, and then in the end, the Magna Carta was all but thrown out. Do you even know that? It was mostly, they still keep in New Zealand section 29, and the only thing that was basically the only section that was given to the people, and it said that they could cause no harm to the people. That was the section that we kept. All the rest of it was thrown out because it was written for the Catholics by the Catholics, the Roman Catholics, who were the ruling power at the time. Now, here's what happened, if you want to know. We're going to get to the preamble, and I'm going to read it to you. It says here, whereas, where's my timing? 1:40. Right. So it says here, whereas the Lord's spiritual and temple and commons assembled at Westminster lawfully, fully and freely, representing all the estates of the people of this realm, which means all the people that were living there, did upon 13th of February, I hope I've got my sound on. I hope you can hear my sound. Okay. I'll put it up for you so you can hear my sound. So 13th of February in the year of our Lord, 1688, present unto their majesty, then called and known by the names of style of William and Mary, Prince and Princess of Orange, being present in their proper persons, a certain declaration in writing made by the said Lords and Commons in the words following. Now, I'm going to explain that little piece to you, because who are the Lord's spiritual and who are the Lord's temporal? And who are the Commons? And this is, I don't know too much about it, but this is to do with the British Parliament. Now, the Lords Spiritual were the Archbishops of Canterbury, the Bishops of London, the Bishops of Durham, the Bishops of Winchester, the specific bishops of the Church of England, and they were the ones that were going to be the overseers. So when we get down to the Bill of Rights, it's talking about how they threw out the king and they put in the Prince and the Princess of Orange, and this is telling you why they did it. And so what happened was they had a system to protect all of us from people like Jacinda Ardern and those people in there. So the Lords Spiritual were all of the Anglican priests, not Catholics. They had thrown out the Catholics and they had put in the Anglican priests and bishops and archbishops. That's called the Lords Spiritual. So you had the Prince and Princess, and then you had the Lords Spiritual, which were all the religious leaders, very religious in that time, and then you had the Lords Temporal. Lords Temporal had two sections. One section were called the Life Peers, and the second section were called Hereditary Peers. Hereditary Peers were people like earls and dukes, all of the royal family offshoots, cousins, uncles, all of those people were still members of the royal family, but they weren't direct lines to the throne. But they had a system of governance back then, and so it was all their cousins and all of those that took care. They were called the Lords Temporal. Now, there were the hereditary peers who were born to it, and the life peers, which were the people that after they did many good works for the public and they worked together well with the church and they worked together and they'd been in Parliament, they were appointed by the Queen. They were the only ones appointed. I think the bishops and all of those were I'm not sure if they're appointed maybe by the Queen or the archbishops. I'm not sure of it all. So we've got the Prince and Princess, we've got the Lords Spiritual, we've got the Lords Temporal, life peers and hereditary peers, and then after that came the Commons. The Commons was the elected Prime Minister and all of the elected members of Parliament. And so they had double checks for themselves. They had many, many checks and balances to stop this tyranny of government that we have today. They put this all in way back in the 1600s, and they're knocking it down. This is what's wrong in our lives, people. And so the people that the Commons were the PMs that were voted in by the people. Now, if they wanted to change a law or they wanted to make new laws, they had to go through the Lords Temporal. And after the Lords Temporal, it went to the Lords Spiritual because they wanted to check. And then it went to the Queen. Now, the Queen, she has no power over Parliament. So you can all just forget about that. She's not ruling Parliament. She was placed there. Well, not her, but the Princess of Orange. Princess Mary, she was placed there, it's going to tell you in here, to protect this. That's her job. When the Commons and the Lords Temporal and the Lords Spiritual want to change any laws, they send it to the Queen, and she makes sure that it doesn't go against this Bill of Rights that we the people wrote. So that's her job. So all these people are saying, the Queen didn't do anything for us. She's not allowed to do anything in Parliament. It was written into here that the Queen, I shouldn't call it she, the Queen has no power over Parliament. The Queen just checks that their laws don't infringe on our rights. And that's why we like to keep with the constitutional monarchy. It's called a constitutional monarchy, where she protects the constitutions of the people, and that is not what's being done, because people have been told, oh, why am I poor? It's the Queen's fault. Why is my government doing this? It's the Queen's fault. It's not her fault. It's the Parliament's fault. But so that you understand. So Lord's spiritual, Lord's temporal, and the commons have all met together in February, and we have given the names of William and Mary, Prince and Princess of Orange, to come and govern the country. Now, I want to talk to you, so I'll read on a bit. So it says, whereas the late King James II, by the assistance of the divers, which is the priests, evil counsellors, judges, ministers employed by him, did endeavour to subvert and extirpate the Protestant religion. So what had happened is they had thrown out the Roman Catholics. The Roman Catholics had left. And what had happened was they were trying to sneak back through King James. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. And what he had done through the councillors of them had tried to throw out all of Parliament that the people had put in place. So this is, he said, by committing and prosecuting the divers prelates. So divers prelates are the people in the Parliament, all the people in the Parliament that did not agree with the King and his nasty Catholic councillors. He was putting them into prison for humbly petitioning to be excused from concurring to the said assumed power. So they said, they were Parliament, and they said, we don't agree to go along with anything that you say. And so he said, well, if you don't agree with me, I'm going to put you all in prison. So he put them all in prison, and some of them he chopped their heads off. And then he had his evil counsellor. So this is why they wanted to get rid of him. Now, I want to talk a bit about, in that time, they had these people called the Lollards. Now, the Lollards were against the Catholic religion, and they were similar to the Anglicans, but I don't know exactly, but we had Anglicans and we had Protestants, and we had these Lollards, and this is what they believed. The Lollards believed that the church was too involved with the temporal power. Do you remember I told you the temporal power are the life peers and the hereditary peers? And the king, he was saying that the church, which was the Lord's spiritual, was having too much power over the Lord's temporal, which they weren't supposed to have, because the Lord's temporal were the direct line to the commons, and the commons were the direct line to the people, okay? And so for the Lord's spiritual were off there, and they were interfering. And so the Lollards believed that they should not do that. The Lollards believed in ceremonies that the priests were having had no scriptural basis. That was that the Catholics were putting bread onto the bread and the wine, and they were saying that the bread was literally Jesus Christ, and that the cordial or whatever it was literally Jesus's blood. And the Lollards said that's not even in the Bible, and it's not even true. So they do have the bread and they do have the wine, but they say it is representative of Jesus Christ, but it is not the body or the blood of Jesus Christ in a literal sense like the Catholics do. They said that the clerical celibacy encouraged sodomy. So what was happening was, in the Catholic Church, they were not allowed to marry, but many of them, not all of them, but many of them, sorry Catholic Church, I don't want to offend anybody, but it's just the way it was back then, and now we're in 2000, so I suppose we can talk about it. But what happened was a lot of the clergy, because, sex is the most normal and natural human function, but they believed as long as they weren't having sex with a female, that they were upholding their vows of not having sex. So they believed, some twisted it and believed that if they performed sodomy on either some of them believed only males, and some of them believed it was okay if it was a female as well, as long as it wasn't in the fanny, and as long as it was in the bum, then they were still celibate because they were never doing it in the fanny. So anything went except up the fanny, is the way that they did it. And so the Lollards believed that that was a direct result of the Catholics' refusal to allow priests to marry. They thought that that was against God's will. Number 4 is too complicated. Number 5, the Lollards believed that exorcisms were witchcraft, and soothsaying, like reading the palms, reading the cards, all of that was considered to be witchcraft, and they didn't believe it to come from the Bible, and it wasn't God's will. But a lot of the Catholics were doing it. They also believed that it was not appropriate. Number 6, so they had altogether there was 12 main ones. Number 6, they believed it was not appropriate for the high church members to also hold Lord's temporal or Lord's spiritual. So they remember the Lord's temporal are below the Lord's spiritual, and then it's the commoners. And some of the Lord's spiritual wanted to be Lord's spiritual and Lord's temporal, which means they had too much power because there was no check, because it would go from the people to the Parliament to the Lord's temporal to the Lord's peers to the Queen, who would check it with the Bill of Rights, and then it would be approved. And that's how laws were made, which was a great thing for us. It was very good. Many, many checks and balances. But when one of the Lord spiritual goes down to the Lord temporal, he's cutting out one of the checks and balances, you see, and he had too much influence. So they said that was no good, out with that. Number 7 was too complicated. Number 8, they believed the Lollards were a Western Christianity. They're the Western Christianity that we have today comes from the Lollards. So remember those wonderful Lollards. And the Lollards, they believed that using relics, which means the big crosses and the big cathedrals with the many things there, and the big statues that they were making, all the big statues, they believed that relics for spiritual merit encouraged tourism. It encouraged money-making enterprises, fraud, and they said it was against the Christian church, and which is true. They didn't, in the Christian churches, a lot of the Anglican churches, they're not tourism places, so you can't go there just to be a tourist. You can only go there to worship God, whereas some of the bigger places, the Catholic cathedrals and things, they're open as tourism places. And they're not really, a lot of people don't go to worship God. They go there as a tourist attraction, and a lot of people are making money from them, and the Lollards believe that was against the Christian Bible, for the Western Christian Bible. Number 9, the Lollards believed that confession was sinful. They said only God can forgive, and the common man couldn't forgive. Now, I'm not arguing with the Catholics about that, because that's you. Whatever you want to do, by all means, if that what make you feel better, it's not my thing. But if that's your thing, there's nothing wrong with that. Not criticising it, but this is just what the Lollards believed, and each Christianity has a different belief. Number 10. They believed that Christians should refrain from wars. They said that Christians should not be involved with wars that are given religious justifications. So there's wars in Palestine, there's wars in Israel, any wars that are given religious justification are considered an abomination of any God. No God, the greatest sin In God's eyes, the greatest sin is that you kill something that was made in the image of him, that you kill a human being. And when you have religious laws saying that you're killing people in the name of God, it's like a slap in the face to God, in my opinion. So that's what they believed. There was a number 12, and there were many. So these were the Lollards, and they believed in Western Christianity. Now, the Lollards and the Protestants were the people that fought off the Catholics and got them out. They wanted the Roman Catholics out. And now what happened, there are some people that somebody was saying to me that the Queen is illegal. They said the Queen is illegal because they said that Charles I was executed. In 1649, Charles I was executed, and there was no crown. They removed the monarchy completely because it was not a constitutional monarchy. It was an absolute monarchy because the Catholic Church believed in an absolute power. And so he was an absolute monarch, and he was removed, and he had his head chopped off, I'm led to believe, I don't know. And what happened was, from 1649 to 1658, so 9 years, they let the barons and would have been all the, just anybody could rule. The Lords Spiritual, the bishops, the Catholic Church would have ruled, the Lords Temporal would have ruled. They would have had some kind of a parliament. But what happened was, in 1649, there was another law apparently. And in that law, it said there will never again be a king. And so people are running around saying it's a fake queen because of that time when Charles I was thrown out, and there was a law written that said there would no longer be a king. But what they found was that without the king, they had no one to petition to, because the barons and the earls and all of them just took over, and they were horrible to the people. And the Lollards and the Catholics also took over again. And what happened was, in 1658, a Scottish army, the Lollards, anything went except what? Billy Winter. Lollards, anything. So she said, Billy Winter says anything went with the Lollards, except, I don't know what she says next, but I'll wait for you. Type away. So anyway, what happened was in 1658, Zane, can you come and turn my air on, please? Zane, Mummy's hot. Go on. I'm getting through this without swearing today. Must be because I'm talking about God and I'm too scared. Might strike me down. Oh. Have to speak politely when we're speaking in front of the Queen. I know my place. Go Reds. Garaman. Know thy place. Not swearing around the Queen. So anyway, 1658, the Scots marched into town. And they said to these people that were ruling, get out. Oh, they sent them to the Tower of London. So it was a guy called Lambert and another guy, but I don't want to go into the names too much. But they put them in the Tower of London and threw them out. And in 1660, this is what a lot of people are not telling you, there was a restoration of the crown in 1660. And it came under restoration of the crown. There was a law for it anyway. I haven't got it. It was called the Declaration of Breda, B-R-E-D-A, the Declaration of Breda, and that restored the crown back because they found that it wasn't working. Because it's like, look at Jacinda Ardern, look at all those people that are in power. They removed the constitutions and they've got no checks and balances. The Governor-General, you can forget about that, she's with them. They've got no checks and balances. They've overruled the courts. They've overruled everything. They've given themselves, and look what they're doing. Well, this is what happened in 1649 to 1658 when they had no monarchy in there to have, because the Queen has her own armies, you know, and her armies, they follow her. You've got, you've got the King's Guard and the Queen's Guard and all of those, which are separate from the government army. So she's got a lot of power, but at the same time she doesn't. So the Scots come in and threw them out. They restored, and then in 16, it's going to be long again. Oh, I hate these long videos. So they restored it, and in 1685 to 1688, the King James came to rule. Okay, now I wanted to tell you a little bit about Mary. So Mary, this is what happened. Mary was the child of Charles I, I think, and Charles II adopted Mary, and she went to Orange, which was in the Netherlands, and she was married to Prince William. She got married to Prince William in the Netherlands. And what happened was Henry, was it Henry? I've got to flip a flop here. Yeah, James, sorry. James was ruling, and he wasn't really Catholic, but the Catholics, the Catholics were not allowed to rule. And what happened was the Catholics started worming their way back in, the Roman Catholics again, and all of those people. And James's first wife died, and he married a second wife. The second wife it's very important that you remember this. He married the second wife, and she was a Catholic. And he held, James held the throne, and the people didn't really care because they knew that when he died, the throne would go directly to Mary. And Mary was an Anglican. And so they were quite happy about that. When he married, he was still Anglican. And when he married the Catholic, he changed to be a Catholic, because in order to marry a Catholic, you have to change to be a Catholic, and you must raise your child to be a Catholic by the Catholic laws. You have to sign papers, because my brother had to sign papers. He married a Catholic, and he had to sign papers. And what happened was, when James married the second wife, a son was born. And when the son was born, the people knew that the crown would not pass to Mary, who was Anglican. It would pass to a Catholic. And when they'd thrown all the Catholics out, right along with the Magna Carta, which was written by the Catholics for the Catholics. It was written by the Catholics. That's why you don't want to go back to that Magna Carta. Only Section 29. Nothing else. Because it's for the Catholics. And that's why they're trying to get you to go back to it. You're hearing all this talk about it. I can't swear next to the Queen, but it's very bad. So what happened was they threw him out, and the reason they threw him out and made this Bill of Rights is specifically because the Catholics kept coming back to take over. So this time they wrote the mother of all bills of rights and laws to protect all of us. Now that's all I'm going to tell you. But they explain to you here in the preamble why they threw him out. And these are the things, these are the things that he was doing. And I want you to listen carefully, because these are the things that Jacinda Ardern is doing. Exactly the same thing. Firstly, they've listed it all. Number one, he suspended all the laws without he did it without the consent of Parliament, with the aid of sneaky divers, prelates, and the bishops. So those bishops, the spiritual, Lord Spiritual, all interfere, and they suspended all of the laws of Parliament, and anybody that disagreed with them was either killed or put into the prison. But if you look at Jacinda Ardern, they're saying consent of Parliament, but what she's done is, no, I couldn't edit, anything went except up the anything went except up the not the lollards. The lollards. No, I was talking about the Catholic priest. Anything went except up the fanny. The lollards could do it up the fanny. They said up the fanny is fine. And the lollards said that they were against, they were against because the Catholics disallowed marriage. And so a lot of the Catholics were engaging in sodomy up the bum, because, not that there's anything wrong with that if that's what you like to do, but they were doing it with the very young boys. You know all about that, don't you, New Zealand? And so, but the lollards said, no, you could do it up the fanny, that was all right. Yeah, I think, yeah, the lollards are the good ones, Billy Winter. Anyway, suspended the laws. This is what Jacinda Ardern, not only, because if you look at it, in 1986, both National and Labour got together in the middle of the night and threw out the 1852 Constitution, which I'm not going to talk about today. That's in the next one. Threw it out, okay? So, but that's suspending Parliament in itself by two opposing parties getting together, and it's not really consent of Parliament, because in consent of Parliament they should be debating it in the Parliament, letting the public know. It should go to the people and then it goes to the Parliament and all of that, but they didn't do that, so they suspended laws without any consent of Parliament. That's Jacinda. Number two, another one for Jacinda, they prosecuted the prelates for petitioning to be excused from concurring with the assumed power. So what happened was that anyone that didn't agree with them was put in the prison. Now this is what they're doing now, and I tell you, the Tilford man, they put him in the prison for fighting them for taking his lands. And what I can tell you is that they're starting to do that now. They're going to start bringing in the free speech laws that they're bringing in, and they're going to start arresting people, anyone that speaks against them and doesn't concur with their deviant things that they all want to do. They're going to be going to prison. They're actually going to be having prison sentences for typing something on Facebook, for speaking something from your mouth. You're going to be able to go to prison, which is pretty awful. Now the next thing, this is King James, what King James was doing, why they threw him out. He issued and caused a commission under the Great Seal for erecting a court, and he called the court the Court of Commissioners for Ecclesiastical Causes, which means that he established a court for the priests, that the priests and the bishop would all be in charge of, and there'd be no more commons, there'd be no more temporal lords, there'd be no more commons, there'd be no more parliaments, but there would be a court of commissioners of all of the bishops and those people. He levied money. Now she's pretty much done that. You know, she's made her own court, because she has made a law that the courts cannot overrule Parliament. So that means that she's basically made herself to be her own court. That's what she's done. They have levied money for use by the Crown with no permission of Parliament. Well, when you have no opposition in Parliament, you have two parties working together, and you have a dominant party that does not answer to the Governor-General, does not answer to the Queen, does not answer to the court, well, and then they're using all our money. They're spending all our money. They're borrowing $500 billion and handing it out like candy to the Samoa, the Pacific. They're just handing our money out like candy, putting all our descendants in debt for generations to come. That is not the permission of Parliament. We didn't give her permission to do that. Ask anyone, they're all saying no. Not allowed to swear today. No swearing because I'm with the Queen. So there. Otherwise, I'd be saying some really bad words. They raised a standing army in the time of peace, which they have done. They're trying to say, they use the Health Act that we're putting us in lockdowns. There's not really a standing army, but if you're in a lockdown and you're not free to go outside and breathe fresh air and go to the beach and walk freely and hug your elderly people and go and see your mother, go and see your father, that is raising a standing army against you. Just because they give it the name police don't mean nothing. It's still a standing army against you in a time of peace. New Zealand is not at war, except with our government. The King James, ordered the Protestants, all Christians, which would have included the Lollards, to be unarmed while the Catholics were armed. And this is what they've done in New Zealand. They have unarmed all of the people, except the Maoris that are clever and they're keeping all their guns, and good on you, mate, for doing that. But they're unarming, they've taken all the guns away, but they're keeping guns for themselves. Isn't that funny? You know, this Maori nation, don't think they haven't got all their guns. Well, you've got none. All the white people, all of us people, they're all gone. King James violated freedom of election. Well, they have done that. We're very suspicious about these elections. How did Jacinda Ardern, win the entire South Island, every single electorate in the South Island was won by Jacinda Ardern? It has never been heard of in the history of New Zealand for that to happen. And it suddenly happens for the most unpopular Prime Minister. So I'm not saying it was rigged, but I'm saying I'm feeling very suspicious about it. They made illegal, the King James made illegal prosecutions that should be prosecuted by the court. I don't know if we're doing that. The corrupt people, and this is something that if you look in our parliament, I just wanted to write the Lollards. Yeah, you have. I'm very grateful. Yeah, you're right. And okay, I'll just move on, but I know what you're saying, and you're right. Sometimes I get lost in translation. Sometimes, you know, when I'm reading the things on the side, because you only write a little bit, and it's not the same as speaking to each other. And sometimes we do misunderstand each other, and we always have to try to allow for that it's typed, and sometimes we don't type the whole thing because it's too long. You type a little bit, and sometimes I don't understand, and I probably didn't understand, but I understand now, Billy Winter. Okay, the Queen loves you too. Right, now, what King James did, he put corrupt people and unqualified people returned to act as the jurors, particularly in the trials of the divers, which was the other people that were going against them. In other words, jury tampering. And yes, national, yeah, they are. They're in it together. And that's why they're going against Parliament, because if they don't have an opposing force, then that's not a Parliament. And they're making laws that are not made in Parliament, because we don't have an opposing Parliament, and the courts have no power over them. And what they're doing here, but this is an important one, I really want to say this, they're putting corrupt people and unqualified people into power. And if you look at all the people going into our Parliament, look how young they are. They're putting like 20-year-olds in our Parliament. Youth Parliament, they're putting 18-year-olds in there debating New Zealand laws. They're not even New Zealand born. They're putting people that have been in New Zealand for less than 10 or maybe 10 years, they're putting them in Parliament. These people have no idea about New Zealand. I've lived in Thailand 30 years and I could not tell you. I've tried to study their history. I speak their language almost fluently. I read it, I write it, and I barely have scratched the surface of their history. I know nothing about them and I would never try to be in it. And they're putting they're young, they're new to New Zealand, they're not born in New Zealand, they're dual citizenship people that are allegiant to other countries, and they're filling our parliament with them. Now, why are they doing that? I'll tell you why. Because they're so unqualified that anybody, you could tell them that a French fry is a pencil and they will take it and write their resume with it. That's what they'll believe, anything. And all they're there for is the money. They don't give a toss about New Zealand. And she and that Judith Collins, she's in on it too. They're all in on it. Helen Clark, John Key, the whole freaking, I'm not swearing because I'm with the Queen, but the whole lot of them are puppeting these unqualified people that are not New Zealand born citizens, not New Zealand people, and they're puppeting them, and these people will do anything for the money. They've gone, one of them has gone from waiting tables in a restaurant for, I don't know, a few $100s a week to an almost $200,000 a year salary. He's getting like $10,000 to $15,000 a month. What do you think he's going to do? Do you think that this guy that doesn't even have the Mexican I'm talking about, not even a university degree, I'm going off track, not going to go off track. But anyway, so that's what she's been doing, putting unqualified people into our parliament, same as King James. She's, I think that Jacinda Ardern and her father read the Bill of Rights and they copied exactly what he was doing. Yes. Also, every department is, yes, every department, all the ministries are managed by foreigners. The O-Ringa Tamariki, I'm not going to use this Maori crap language anymore. I'm sorry, Maori, but I'm not. I'm going to use English. The child welfare is headed up by a foreigner from Ireland. No offence to Irish people, but she's from Ireland. And we've got Matthew Tutaki, he's come over from Australia. We've got the Fijian Alpito CEO, he's Fijian. They're all, almost every single corporation, government department in New Zealand is headed up by a foreigner that does what they're told. And, okay, I'm going to get to that in a minute, back to the Queen. So these are all the things that he did, okay? So that's in the preamble. So what they said, that the Lord's spiritual, the Lord's temporal, and the Lord's commoners, which is the commoners, and then the people, and Prince and Princess of Orange. Prince and Princess of Orange are going to be the caretakers of this. That's all they do. And then the other ones are going to rule, and then they've explained to you why they have done this and all the things that he did, okay? And then that was all of that. And excessive fines, several grants and promises. He was making grants, promises, okay, being commissioned. So they said all of these things that he was doing, the juicy target it was. Yes, that's right. All of which, that's just funny. All of which was utterly and directly contrary to the known laws and statutes, the freedom of the realm which was all of us countries. So I'll go on and read. Whereas the said late King James II, having abdicated the government and the throne being thereby vacant, His Highness the Prince of Orange, whom it was pleased by Almighty God. So she serves under God. That's what she does. Almighty God, to make the glorious instrument of delivering this kingdom from popery and arbitrary power. So that's the glorious, this was called the Glorious Revolution. And she was well, not her, I should have a picture, but we'll pretend that this is Princess Orange, okay, Princess Mary. Pretend you're Princess Mary. Right, Princess Mary is the instrument that will protect the document that will deliver the kingdom from popery and arbitrary power. Did by the advice of the Lord spiritual and temporal and divers principal persons of the common, cause letters to be written to the laws spiritual and temporal, being Protestants. So this is the time when they said the Catholics, the Roman Catholics, will no longer rule in any of the dominions or the Commonwealth realms. They cannot rule. And this is the time that they put that in place. And this is why the Catholics and the Muslims, Muslims and the Zionists, they keep calling out to the Magna Carta, because the Magna Carta supported the Catholics. The Bill of Rights is for us, written by us. So please be clear about that. And other letters to several countries, cities, universities, boroughs and ports, for the choosing of such persons to represent them as if were of right to be sent to Parliament, and to meet and sit at Westminster upon the 22nd of January in this year, 1688, in order to such an establishment as that their religion, laws and liberties might not again be in danger of being subverted, upon which letters elections having been accordingly made. So what they said was, they sent letters to every single country, every single person, and they said, come to Westminster and we're all going to have a big meeting together and we're all going to vote together. And it's at this time that they all agree that Princess Mary and Prince William III and Princess Mary II would be in power. And that was agreed by all of the dominions, not only England. New Zealand wasn't there, but all of the dominions that were dominions at that time were all there. And they were not allowed to, they had to be, there were no Catholics. They weren't allowed. And they said that you could set up your parliaments. We want you all to set up parliaments. You will no longer be ruled by tyranny and popery. You can set up your own parliaments. Your people can vote for you. We want you to set up your parliaments. And when you've set up your parliaments, and this is what they tried to get the Maori to do in 1835, which we'll talk about in another video. And then after you've set up your parliaments and you've voted them, we want you to come. And this was the establishment of democracy as we know it today. And what has happened is, now I want to tell you something about this King James. What happened was, a year later, when he was thrown out, he went to France and he was protected by the Catholic priests, and they kept him. And then what they did was they sent him back to Scotland or Ireland there, and he fought again to reclaim his crown. And that was supported by the Catholic Church because they wanted it all back, because they were very unhappy about this Bill of Rights, you see. They don't want this Bill of Rights here, and they don't want it even today. Now, he went back and he tried, but they threw him out again. They said, no, you vacated and you left and you're out, which was a good thing for us. And so he went off to France and he lived with the Catholic Church. Now, these Catholic, sorry, Catholics, the Catholics that go to the church, the commoners, those people are all right. They're just going to experience their faith. But it's these Freemason leaders that we're talking about. Not talking about the lovely Catholics that just go to pray, or the lovely Jewish people or Muslim people that go to pray. That's nice, but these leaders are trying to take over, and we don't want that. None of us want that. So what happened was, since then, the Catholic Church and the Zionist Church and the Islamic Church, all of them have been trying to get rid of this document, and they're very near to doing it. Now, these are the rights. I'm just going to read the rights. These are the rights that the Queen must give us. There would be the pretended power. Oh, I'll read. I want to read all of this. We must read it together. Some people in New Zealand can't read, so I'm going to read it to them. These are the subjects' rights, and thereupon the said lords, spiritual and temporal and commons, pursuant to their respective letters and elections, being now assembled in a full and free representative of this nation, taking into their most serious consideration the best means for attaining the ends aforesaid, which are coming. Do in the first place, as their ancestors in like case have usually done, for the vindicating and asserting their ancient rights and liberties declare. Now, a lot of people are saying to you, go back to the natural law. This is the natural law. It says here, for vindicating and asserting their ancient rights and liberties. So this is, the natural law was not on paper. It was just people got together and said, these are the laws we want. But this put those natural laws onto paper, and they said, from now on, anybody that governs, we don't care if you sell the lands, we don't care about your cheating, we don't care about your lying, we don't care about your sneaky politics, all of that we don't care about. But you know what? If you interfere with these rights, the Queen's going to rule with her army. Is what's going to happen. So that's what they said. And they gave these few rights to us. Very important. There will be no dispensing of power, Jacinda Ardern. That the pretended power of suspending laws or the execution of laws by regal authority without consent of Parliament is illegal. However, when they have thrown out the regal authority, okay, and they've put in this usurping of Parliament, well, they're not really they're not the Parliament that's set up. That's a coup, isn't it? So it's not the consent of Parliament. They don't have consent of Parliament. Consent of Parliament is the consent of us. And when we say we don't consent, that means the Parliament, although we voted, but they brought in 2 million refugees to vote for them, didn't they? Which is a sneaky bloody thing. I'm not going to read them all, but I'll do the important ones. So that was the first one that was very important, that they could not, the main thing that you want to remember there is that they can't suspend any laws for any reason without having it go to the people and all of these things. So that's what they're doing in Australia, New Zealand, all around the world. They're suspending laws using this Health Act. And under this, if we still had this when they threw it out in 1986, they could not do any of this in 1986 if this was still in power. It's still there now. It's not gone yet, but they're getting there. They're trying. The other one that was very good was the right to petition. You have the right to petition, all the subjects have the right to petition the King, and all commitments and prosecutions for such petitioning are illegal. So in that, we all have the right we all had the right to petition the Queen, but in 1986 or around that time, they removed our right to petition the Queen. So when they suspend our laws, we have no right to petition the Queen because they've removed that. Now that's illegal, what they've done. And so a lot of people are saying, well, the Queen doesn't do it. We might as well get rid of the Queen and be a republic because she's not doing anything. The devious people that are in the parliament now, all these people in there, they removed the Queen's right. And the Queen is not allowed to go against the parliament because when you vote parliament in, you're giving your consent. When you give the consent to parliament, the Queen has no power over what those parliaments do because in the past, under British law, they had to send it to the Queen to change the law, but not only in New Zealand, in England, they also removed that law. Now, so we can't petition the Queen anymore, but we can, it's still there, but they're trying to get rid of it. The subjects, all of the Protestants, we have the rights to have arms, the right to bear arms to be used for self-defense. And America's got it and they hold on to it dearly. And that's been removed from us. That elections of parliament ought to be free. You know, well, not really. And the other one was the freedom of speech, that the freedom of speech and debates or proceedings in parliament ought not be impeached or questioned in court or placed out of parliament. So that they've made laws where parliament, the people are not allowed to come out of parliament and talk about what they're doing in there, and everything's done in secret. So we've lost our freedoms of speech, we've lost our right to petition the Queen, we've lost the right that they cannot suspend the laws. And where is it? Oh, I'm not even finished. They can't have excessive bail. Oh, the cruel and unusual punishment. They're also not allowed to have that. Now, so those are all our rights. That they don't care about the cheating and the lying. They said we must have free speech. We must have the right to petition the Queen if we're not happy. They cannot suspend the laws of Parliament and suspend our Bills of Rights and our constitutions. They're not allowed to suspend our Bills of Rights and constitution. They can suspend any laws that they want, but they cannot suspend our constitutions and our Bills of Rights, and that's why we need them. And now it went on from there that you had to swear an oath to the Queen. And I'm hearing a lot about, we don't want to swear an oath to the Queen. When you swear an oath to the Queen, you're not swearing the oath to the Queen. What you're swearing your oath to is this, the Bill of Rights. You're swearing your oath to our rights that are cared for by her, which is under God, under the Anglican God, the King James Bible. So when you say, I'm not swearing allegiance to the Queen, and it does not surprise me that they said we're not swearing, what they're saying is we're not swearing allegiance to the Bill of Rights. That's what they're not swearing allegiance to, which means they're not swearing allegiance to your rights and my rights and our rights. So anyone that says, I ain't swearing allegiance, this is what they're trying to get out of, because they are not allegiant to the Queen. The Queen is, it goes like this. The Queen is under there, all right? So this is the highest order, the people's order, and the Queen rules in regards to this. And anything else is none of her beeswax. She doesn't want to know about it. She only wants to know, does the law infringe on your rights? If it does, she's going to not sign and she's going to say no. it's against the Bill of Rights. If there's nothing in there that's against the Bill of Rights, she'll sign it. And this is what they want to get rid of, you see. Now, it says here, it says here, the oath should be, have a listen. It says, I swear to abhor, detest, as impious and heretical, this damnable doctrine and position by the Pope, that any princes that are not Catholic from the See of Rome may be murdered. So he was going around, well, not him, but the Roman Catholics, anybody that wasn't a Catholic, Protestant, they were going around killing them. So that's what was happening if they didn't agree with them. And anybody that didn't agree with them would be excommunicated. And as soon as they did that, they would be out of the parliament and things like that and killed. And you must swear the allegiance that I will detest the heretical and damnable position of the Pope or any princes that will allow murder of someone that is not a Catholic that stands up to them. And I declare, listen to this, I declare that no foreign prince or person or state or prelate ought to have power or authority within the realm, so help me God. So this here was blessed by the Lord spiritual, and it was placed under the care of God, and the Queen acts as God's, can we say conduit? She acts as, obviously God can't come down and put his hand down, so she acts under God as a representative. Okay, the Queen acts as the representative to God to make sure that our natural inalienable rights are adhered to by all of these horrible people. And they said that no foreign prince and no foreign person will have power or any authority over us ever, ever, ever again. And then after that, so help me God, and then the two houses will sit. The two houses are the House of Commons, I think, or maybe the Lord's Temple. I think it's the two houses of Commons. The Commons are split into two houses, and the two houses of Commons will sit. I do swear the princes excommunicated. I do declare that no prince or foreign power shall have jurisdiction or superiority. So first you must swear allegiance. I swear I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to their Majesties King William and Queen Mary. But you swear allegiance to them, as I said, because you're swearing allegiance to this. And then it says acceptance of the crown, upon which their said majesties, it's almost finished now, upon which their said majesties did accept the crown and royal dignity of the kingdoms of England, France, and Ireland, and the dominions thereunto, unto New Zealand's a dominion, belonging according to the resolution and desire of the said Lords and Commons contained in the said declaration. The two houses will sit, and thereupon their majesties were pleased that the said Lords spiritual and temporal and Commons, being the two houses of Parliament. So we had two houses of Parliament, then we had the Lords temporal, and then we had the Lords spiritual, and then we had the Bill of Rights, which is cared for by the constitutional monarchy. So I think a lot of you are giving the old Queen quite a hard time. You don't really understand what her role is, and they're saying she's just a head of state. No, she isn't. They, Prince William, Prince Charles, they all protect your rights from these heinous tyranny of government. Anyway, it says here, two houses should continue to sit and with their majesties' royal concurrence make effectual provision for the settlement of the religion, laws and liberties of this kingdom, so that the same for the future might never again be in danger, of being subverted, to which the said Lord's spiritual and temporal and commons did agree and proceed to act accordingly. So they didn't want this to ever happen again. They never wanted us to be, yes, the international health regulations have effectively a treaty authorized by the Constitution of. A treaty authored by the Constitution. I'm sure we're going to write some more there. Incompetence about it. Yes, so what they're saying is that they never wanted this to happen again. What's happened is all of those people, those Roman Catholics and those Zionists, and they're all sneaking back in again, and they're trying to get rid of this. And in New Zealand, I'm saying to all New Zealanders, they're trying to get you to make a new constitution, and they're saying to you that you don't need the Queen. But you know what they're removing? They're not removing the Queen. They said, oh, you can still have the Queen a little bit, she'll still be there. You know what they're removing? They're not talking about the Queen at all. They're talking about this. This is what they want rid of. Yes. Now, the subjects' liberties to be allowed, now in assurance of the premises, the said Lord spiritual and temporal and Commons in Parliament assembled for the ratifying, confirming and establishing the said declaration and the articles, clauses, which means that from this they were to go ahead and write a constitution, which we're going to do next. We're going to do it piece by piece so everybody understands. Do pray that it may be by the force of law made in due form by authority of Parliament, do pray that it may be declared and enacted that all and singular the rights and liberties asserted and claimed in the said declaration are true, ancient. They're talking about, this is the common law that you freaks are all talking about. Ancient and indubitable rights and liberties of the people of this kingdom, and so shall be esteemed, allowed, adjudged, deemed, and taken to be, and that all and every the particulars aforesaid shall be firmly and strictly held and observed as they are expressed in the said declaration, and all officers and ministers whatsoever shall serve their majesties and their successors according to the same in all times to come, which means no hell, no mountain, no nothing is to go against these rights. So everyone's talking about the natural law, go back to the Magna Carta and the natural law. It was enshrined in here, and it was given a protector under God. And listen, New Zealand and Australia, this is what you're destroying when you go along and say we're going to be a republic. What you do is you remove all of your rights, and you put all the rights completely, fully and utterly in the hands of the parliament that we have of Mexicans and Somalians and Moderns. That's what you're doing. So when they call you to say, hey, we're going to have this great new constitution, what they're doing is getting you to legally remove this, because the 1986 removal in the middle of the night was illegal. It was illegal. And now and it was an illegal coup, but now they want to go back sneakily and trickily to get you New Zealanders to hate on the Queen, hate on this, and write a new constitution. And as soon as you do that, you have removed all of your inalienable rights forever. You never can get them back, because just like we had the rigged election, there'll be a rigged referendum, and you won't be able to win it. They've got their 2.5 million refugees that are all going to vote, and what you're going to do is sign away your inalienable rights, and you will never get them. Your children's children are going to be stuck with that forevermore. Be careful, New Zealand, what's going on. Now, where am I up to? Okay. It says here, okay, William and Mary are declared the King and Queen under how it says, and the said Lord spiritual and temporal, seriously considering how it has pleased Almighty God in his marvellous providence and merciful goodness to this nation to provide and preserve their majesties, royal persons most happily to reign over us. There's nothing in there. The limitation of the crown, and for preventing all questions and divisions in this realm by reason of any pretended titles. They're calling, some of them are calling her a pretended title, but because they're saying that Charles was removed, but actually it was reinstated in that law that I told you about back then. And upon which the unity, peace, tranquility, and safety of this nation doth under God. So she's under God, wholly consist and depend. The said Lord spiritual and temporal and commons do beseech their majesty that it may be enacted and established and declared that the crown and regal government of the said kingdoms and dominions, with all and singular the premises thereunto belonging and appertaining, shall be and continue to their said majesties and the survivor of them during their lives and the life of the survivor. And it goes on to say that if the Queen's line is disrupted, then it would go to the Queen of Denmark. So the Princess of Denmark, who are also Anglicans, not Catholics, would come. So if there were no successors for this Queen, and we didn't have William and all of them, but we've got William, we've got Charles, we've got William, we've got all of them. And but it does go on to say it says, faithfully submit themselves forever, and do faithfully promise that they will stand to maintain and defend their said majesties, and also the limitation. So they will defend the limitation and succession of the crown herein specified and contained to the utmost of their powers with their lives and estates, against all persons whatsoever that shall attempt anything to the contrary. Now you see, these people that are attempting to do this, it's all illegal. And all you need is this little document. I don't know why you're all running around trying to set up this lady crown and this Maori nation. Everything you need, mate, it's right here. This is the promise. It hasn't been removed. It's still legal. In 1986, it was removed illegal. This is a legal standing document today. I don't know why anybody is not using it. It's all there. It says here, the popus will be debarred from the crown. Right, better finish now. Whereas it have been found by experience that is inconsistent with the safety and welfare of this Protestant kingdom to be governed by a popish prince, or by any king or queen marrying a papist. So the king or queen married a Catholic, out ski, you go ski. You couldn't even marry them. The said Lord spiritual and temporal and commons do further pray that it may be enacted that all and every person and persons that is, are, or shall be reconciled to, or shall hold communion with the See or Church of Rome, or shall profess the Popish religion, or shall marry a Papist, shall be excluded and be forever incapable to inherit, possess, or enjoy the crown and government of this realm and island and the dominions thereunto belonging, or any part of the same, or to have, use, or exercise any regal power, authority, or, listen to this, here's for us. They cannot use any, it says regal power, but then it says authority or jurisdiction within the same, that's also talking about in Parliament. And in all and every such case or cases, the people of these realms shall be and are hereby absolved of all their allegiance to the Roman Catholic Church. So if you don't want to be allegiant to them, you're no longer going to, they were killing them, and they're no longer allowed to do that. And the said crown and government shall from time to time descend to and be enjoyed by such personal persons, being Protestants. So this is where they're saying no other religion can rule in our parliament. And this is why you had people like Goritz Garaman saying, no, I don't have a religion. And then you had people like Jacinda Ardern, whose father's an elder in the Mormon church, and uncle's an elder in the Mormon church, and another uncle's the president of the Mormon church, and she's saying, I denounce my religion. Do you know why? Because they would not have been allowed to rule in New Zealand Parliament. That's why they did that, and I don't believe them. Some people will believe them, but I don't believe them. They did it because they wanted to be in Parliament. So all they did was left their churches for a little while and then come back and said, oh, no, I'm not allegiant to that. They actually shouldn't be in Parliament. And it shall be in our, and government shall descend and be being Protestants. So you have to be a Protestant, as should have inherited and enjoyed the same in case the said person or persons so reconciled, holding communion or professing or marrying, as aforesaid, were naturally dead. So what they were saying here, now I read that to you for a reason, and it's very important that you understand New Zealand and Australia, what has been happening with our laws during the time between 1970, I think, and the present time now, that they're almost at the place where they've cut this off. But in 2000, I just want to tell you that in 2000, so hold the king to account, not another charge. No, here. In 2015, New Zealand, two things happened during 2015. In 2015, for the first time since this was written, the Lord's spiritual and the Lord's temporal was suspended. And during the time that they suspended, do you remember that the Commons, if they want to change law, they have to go through the Lord's temple and the Lord's spiritual, and then they have to go through the Queen. Well, here's something interesting. During 2015, the Lord's spiritual and Lord's temporal was suspended. And during 2015, New Zealand deleted the law that says the king or queen marrying a pope. They deleted the law that said you couldn't be married to a Catholic if you wanted to work in Parliament. they deleted it. And not only that, during the suspension of the law, they used the excuse, I think it's got a lot to do with New Zealand, they used the excuse that they were going to change the laws so that a woman would be able to become an archbishop, because in the past only men could be the Lord spiritual and Lord temporal, had to be males. And so they reckon that they wanted to change that law. So 2015 they suspended it. And then during that time, New Zealand sneakily again, they're changing a lot of laws. New Zealand sneakily changed the law that if you were married to a Catholic, you wouldn't be allowed to be in Parliament. And I think there's a couple in there. I think even, what's her name? Never mind. Anyway, so that law was suspended. Now, in 2006, that, as you know, Helen Clark changed the law. And I'm just saying to you, what they're saying is we would like to have a New Zealander as the head of state. We would like to have a New Zealander to take care of this, your Bill of Rights and your Constitution. But it's really funny because I'll tell you something. As who said one of the ladies said, Linda Savage said every single department is governed by a foreigner. The higher roles are governed by foreigners. And in 2006, when Helen Clark changed the law to allow foreigners to govern in Parliament, do you know what? 2005, she changed the law. 2006, she appointed a Fijian Governor-General of New Zealand. So the minute that they change our Constitution, the minute that they delete this and delete the 1852 Constitution in a legal way, in 1986 it wasn't done legally, it was done illegally by a coup. But if they do it again under trickery and popery and fakery, it will be legal. And the minute that they do that, don't even believe that they're going to put a New Zealander as the head of state. Who knows? It's probably going to be Russell M. Nelson, or it could be Golritz Garaman, or it could be Burits Buchoni, or it could be the Mexican guy, any one of them, or it could be, I'm suspecting, Alpito C.O. Williams. That's who I'm suspecting it would be. So, New Zealand, I'm telling you, now is not the time to be writing a constitution under all of these conditions. We can't do it. Just don't do it. But if you really got problems, I would go and read this and petition the Queen about it, because this is all you need. It's all in here. That's it for me, folks. Probably all gone. See you later. Long video. Listen in the car. Goodbye. Where am I? And bye, Billy Winter. I always say Billy Winter because I don't want you to think it's that Billy Tikaka. It's Billy Winter, she's really nice. It's a woman. She paints.